Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the County of Brant Council meeting for June the 28th, 2022. Attendance has been taken. Councillor LaFerriere is zoomed into us. We've checked his audio. He can hear us, see us. The approval of the agenda is next. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda, noting there is an addendum? Going to go into 9.2. Councillor Miller.
One item under other business.
Okay. Want to wait till we get to other business? Or do you want to add something to the agenda?
No, I just want to put an item under other business.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Pearce, that the Brant Council agenda and addendum of June 28th, 2022 be approved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have anything stands out? Find you're in a situation later on, please declare. Delegations. Our first delegation is Councillor Joan Gatward with an introduction of the new administrator, the John Noble Home. Remember, Councillor, you only have 10 minutes and we have a hook in the background to take you away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will be less than 1 minute. Mayor Bailey, members of council, staff, and residents of the County of Brant, it is my pleasure to introduce the latest member of our management team at the John Noble Home. Michael Bastian started with the John Noble Home 2 short months ago, and he's a very welcome addition. Michael brings a wealth of experience in long-term care management, including dietary facilities, management as executive director, general manager, and administrator over a 20-year period. He is leading the John Noble Home team through the new provincial fixing long-term care legislation, among other things. And Michael has recently joined the board of directors for the Grand River Council on Aging. Please join me in welcoming Michael Bastian as our new administrator of the John Noble Home.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. That takes us to number 4.2 on the agenda. Michael, if you'd like to come and speak to us, that would be great.
Thank you very much for having us, Mayor and Council. I'd like to do a presentation with Shelley, Finance Director, on the new John Noble Home Belcourt new development, bed development. So, as you probably all know, Belcourt, vacant unit in the John Noble Home. For several years, it sat empty. In 2018, the home was awarded 10 brand new long-term care beds. And in 2019, to meet a growing need within the community, an application was sent for an additional 10 new long-term care beds, which was approved by the ministry, which gave us 20 new long-term care beds to be redeveloped in the Belcourt area. The John Noble Home had wished for a 20-bed unit to meet the growing needs of the dementia behavioral population. In 2019, the home's architect presented preliminary conceptual drawings to the Committee of Management and to present a construction budget, and was also presented with an indicating estimated construction cost and funding source at the time for the new bed development. Construction of the 20-bed unit was halted due to the global pandemic, and as a result, a decision was made to revisit the original design and costings taking into consideration lessons learned during the COVID pandemic. In October of 2021, the Committee of Management requested the home to explore the opportunity to add 20 new long-term care beds on the second floor of the redeveloped unit. In October 2021, the home's architect identified significant changes in the design in order to accommodate future second floor options that would generate significant additional cost that would be covered by the that would not be covered by the current funding model. In March of 2022, through applications, the home was approved for an additional new long-term care beds that would be developed in the Belcourt area. Applications for extra funding to designate the first floor 20 new beds to as a special behavior unit, and to designate the second floor as a critical care or a critical care unit or complex care unit was not approved by the ministry at the time. In May of 2022, the home senior leadership team met with the architects, and there were discussions about keeping the new 40 beds and operating them as regular long-term care beds. The home would then implement strategies and interventions to have the first floor 20 beds operate as enhanced dementia units. So this would require the home to spend extra funds to add new equipment and, for example, new keypads that are scrambler keypads, one-to-guard systems, enhanced door alarm systems, just to name a few of the interventions that would be in place to keep the residents safe and prevent residents with dementia from exiting the facility, which would really mitigate the risk of injuring themselves if they were to ever elope from the home. So the application for extra funding for complex care in behavior unit was not approved, and therefore there were significant costs, as I said earlier. The design, key features of the design is demolition of the existing Belcourt and then new construction. Now, I did provide a printed copy of the drawings that the architect actually provided to us in color, which will identify exactly where the new structure is going to be built in the back of the complex. There'll be 20 long-term care beds stacked together, so there'll be 40 beds with 2 floors, with a courtyard in the middle with wandering loops. The courtyard obviously will be secure. We'll give opportunities for our residents to be able to enjoy outdoor time with the safety and security of having them confined to the courtyard. The 20-bed unit on the first floor will have enhanced security and other interventions, as I mentioned earlier. And at this time, I'd like to hand it to Shelley to give an update on financing.
Good evening, and thank you, members, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. So a Class D estimate was prepared on the new design by the cost consultant, and it now factors in the second story and the additional beds. Total project costs are now estimated at approximately $20.3 million. This includes all construction and soft costs, including consultant fees, furniture, fixture, and equipment, and non-recoverable HST. So it's a total budget cost. This also includes a contingency for escalation, as well as any post-contract change orders. The Class D estimate is a high-level and conservative cost estimate of the total project cost. The province will provide some one-time monies to offset project costs. They include a $250,000 one-time contribution towards proposal development and a $1.8 million cash reimbursement to offset project costs. The home also has just over $2.3 million city and county funds available through the previous 10-year capital plan for the project. This leaves a net amount to be funded in the amount of just under $15.9 million required by the municipalities to fund this project. Should the municipalities decide to fully debenture this amount, then annual debenture payments would be just over $1 million. And this is based on a current interest rate of 4.29%. The province will contribute a per diem over the next 25 years, which can be used towards these debenture payments. The province's per diem amounts to $321,638 annually. The current 10-year capital plan was amended to support additional debenture payments when we were looking at a 20-bed unit. And it's been amended to allow for an additional $250,000 annually towards debenture payments. After factoring in the province per diem and the amount in the 10-year capital plan, a shortfall would exist in the amount of $476,521 annually to pay for the debenture. The county share would be $132,941 annually. If the municipalities wish to increase the capital contribution to the project in the amount of $7.3 million, then additional debenture payments would not be required, and the remaining debenture payments would be funded by the province's per diem and the money set aside in the home's 10-year capital plan. The county would need to contribute $2,036,700 in additional capital based on the current cost-sharing agreement for this to happen. The home has also been asked to project the operating costs of the additional 40 beds. Based on the current contributions, additional operational costs for the county are estimated at $4,532.89 annually per bed, which would, for the 40 beds, equate to $181,315.63.
Thank you very much, Shelley. So a feasibility study was done to investigate the advantages of renovation versus new build and cost efficiencies. Lessons learned from the pandemic included increased dining space, ability to cohort sections of the unit, enhanced infection control were also incorporated in design. G Architects, which is our architect, met with the senior leadership team at the John Noble Home in May of 2022. The leadership team discussed enhanced security and other interventions that should be applied to the first floor 20 beds to help deal with residents with dementia. The leadership team at the John Noble Home discussed the option of building the remaining 20 new beds as regular long-term care beds and 2 stacked 20-bed units. So next steps would be to submit design drawings to the Ministry of Long-Term Care, execute bed development agreement, and proceed to construction activities with shovels hitting the ground in March of 2023. Our architects have projected an anticipated opening and admission of our first resident in December of 2024. And I guess we're open for questions now.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Shelley. Are there any questions to Michael or for Shelley? Councillor Bell, you're first, please.
Thank you. Through you to the presenters. Can you help me understand how we can get 40 additional beds approved but not funding for 40 additional beds? I didn't realize there was a disconnect between the two. Maybe you can educate me. Thank you.
The long-term care beds were already pre-approved for regular long-term care beds. So the complex care unit is extra funding that would be necessary to delegate or designate the second floor as a complex care unit. If there was approval, then there would be significant costs, extraordinary costs, to actually design the building, mainly because of the infrastructure and the need to have oxygen and just a few other things would actually have to be installed in the structure to be able to accommodate the complex care unit. So the complex care unit was declined, the application, and so was the special behavior unit funding. However, it's not to say that we still could apply for the special behavior funding at another time. Even though we have the long-term care beds, the special behavior funding would include extra funding to hire extra staff and also more qualified staff to really support that model of care that is associated with a designated special behavioral unit.
Follow up, if I may, Mr.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I think the average man in the street, woman in the street would be delighted when we are awarded new long-term care beds. The assumption they will make is that the government is providing for that. So I'm shocked that it seems like we're being handed down the costs from provincial government to municipal government if we want this project to proceed. Is that correct assessment?
May I hand this over to Shelley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The province has never funded 100% the capital construction of long-term care beds. In fact, the per diem in the construction funding model is a little outdated. And there are a number of factors that have even changed since this project was initiated. One of the largest factors that's having an impact on the project is the interest rate alone. So the province has stuck with us per diem. That's about 3 years ago. And there is a lot of lobbying that is going on right now in the province because all projects are having the same challenges. And hopefully the province will step up and look at that per diem to more cover what the actual construction costs of facilities are today and the interest rates that we're facing. So through you, Mr. Mayor, when the project was originally developed, it was more fully funded, but a number of factors have changed. And unfortunately, the per diem has stayed the same.
I do hope that, through you, Mr. Mayor, that our new MPP or recently re-elected MPP is properly getting lobbied on this one. It seems that his government has promised an awful lot in the long-term care sector, and it seems like the words are a little empty if the funding doesn't follow.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Are there any other questions? Councillor Pierce, you're next, and then Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So just a quick question here, if I can. You said, you know, the architects looked at it and that sort of thing. The existing building that's there where this unit is going to be built, so the suggestion was to, instead of incorporating that building in the new build, is to completely rip it down and build net new? Like the existing there is in such bad shape that it can't be used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there were a lot of lessons that were learned in COVID and also a lot of lessons in structuring a unit that more meets the needs of the dementia population. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the original design did not have the courtyard, did not have the ability to segregate, did not have a lot of things. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the committee did go back and look at those lessons that we learned during COVID, and it was suggested by the architect that there was no value in maintaining the original structure, that the home and would be best served to build new.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the presenters, a couple questions. Extremely disheartening to read that the behavioral and the critical care were turned down. I always thought those beds were needed, not just for the John Noble home, but for the community. Obviously, we want to help take pressure off hospitals, which are operating beyond 100%. Behavioral unit, very frustrating because what do we do with behavioral people who have those issues? We ship them out, right? So we can't visit them that as easily. So extremely disappointed. My question is, why did the minister turn it down?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposals were written and they were well received by the local Ontario Health Team, the Western Health Team. Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the time there was an election campaign going on, and we were informed that at that time they're called priority access beds, that no priority access bed applications were being reviewed and were being received. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not to say that down the pipe that the province won't relook at it. Our hopes are that by the time we construct the units, through you, Mr. Mayor, that we can still lobby to have more special care, more dementia care. through you, Mr. Mayor, but we didn't feel it was prudent to build extra things on the second floor, which would substantially increase the construction costs to do critical care to a certain extent. So the leadership team did review it and did decide that certainly we can offer within the design a program for behaviors, maybe not to the extent of what we would have liked to do had we received extra funding, but our hopes that we can still get priority access beds by 2024 and that we can enhance what we're doing, and we are building the long-term care design is still the same to be able to support that.
Okay, so the game's not over, for the big ladies thing. So what I would hope that the committee of management would do, and I hope the senior staff at the John Noble Home will do, is reapply next year. I would strongly encourage that because, like I say, not so much the John Noble Home, it's the community that really needs it. This is the best way to do it, I think, I would say, through a municipally funded home. You've mentioned in your presentation a couple times you've met with the senior leadership team, met with the architect this past May regarding the cost. Was there discussion with the architect about any changes that could be done to lower the cost?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the Class D estimate is a high level, and it's not in the detail that we will get into. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we thought it was best to present the construction budget at the time. Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely we will go through a value engineering process to ensure that we are taking all efficiencies into consideration. Through you, Mr. Mayor, but this is just a Class D estimate, high level costing, which is conservative, to make sure that we're not, through you, Mr. Mayor, coming back at a later time asking for more funds.
Okay. And I asked that question because we haven't built it yet, right? So if we can do what we can to keep those costs down, keeping in mind that interest rates are getting up there. So you keep the principal down, you don't pay so much in interest, but I think you understand that better than most of us. Last question. If these are regular beds, are the operating costs of these beds the same as the existing beds?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, our projection at this time is that we're giving you the cost based on today's operating model. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's difficult to know where the province is going. I can tell you that there have been significant investments in long-term care. Again, I wanted to project it based on what I know today. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is the opportunity to perhaps have some efficiencies, but through you, Mr. Mayor, when you get to a mass of 40 beds, it's harder to have the efficiencies that you might have been able to have at 10 beds because, as an example, you know, things you can absorb within your current infrastructure, like your payroll, through you, Mr. Mayor, may work at 10 beds, but 40 is a bigger number.
I guess we'll know in a few years. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, perhaps a question to the new administrator. I'm just looking at the picture, and maybe you can pull it up on the screen of the John Noble Home complex that was in the package, which shows the old Bell Court, and you can kind of superimpose the new building into that particular place. No, the aerial photograph of the John Noble Home is what I'm talking about. So I've been a while since I've walked through the John Noble Home. One of my first council meetings was the celebration of the opening of the Bell Court that we're now tearing down. So it has been a while, and these buildings do begin as state of the art, but do have a lifetime of probably 30 years. I'm just wondering, what I was always impressed with the John Noble Home is how one area seemed to complement the other areas. And the newest build on the east side complements the rest of the John Noble Home complex, is what I'll call it. I'm just wondering if you could maybe tell me how this new build will integrate with the existing complex and make it a campus rather than a individual blocks on a map.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can say that in my experiences with other projects and other homes, that integrating the new build into the older structure is certainly a good opportunity to keep the community together. The staffing model would apply the same throughout the entire organization. So staff that work in the new build will be engaged with the staff that work in the other home areas, if you will, in the older building as well. When it comes to celebrating success together with our staff, it's going to be everybody that works in the home, and that would include everybody in the 106-bed campus of care will be all included. So it's not going to be considered just you're in the new building and you're in the old building. We're going to be certainly engaging with all our teams, so everybody gets involved and that everybody knows exactly what what the new building's like, and they'll have an opportunity to know a lot more about it and work in that unit as well.
Follow up, Councilor Chambers.
And just to follow up, I'm wondering if you could just expand a little bit from the eyes of the residents, how this will integrate into a good place to live, understanding that with dementia that it's sometimes difficult.
Certainly. We have the opportunity to really design a concept, a model of care. Even though these are regular long-term care beds, there is an opportunity for us to look at the structure and look at the staffing model and try to apply interventions that would really concentrate on the residents with dementia. In fact, a little bit more than the rest of the home. So even though the 20-bed unit on the first floor will be concentrating on residents that have dementia, we can call it the dementia unit or we can call it the lock unit, but it's not going to be that special behavior unit that we've applied for the extra funding. However, there is a lot of interventions that can be applied to really mimic what the other homes are doing. And there's different models of care. For example, the butterfly model of care, and there's other models of care that we can apply that can really enhance the way that we can stimulate the residents and apply special training to our staff. So the current staff model is not going to increase, but the education and the training and the certification will certainly be a game changer for anyone working in that 20-bed unit. And as the population changes, and we find that there's a huge increase of complex residents coming into our regular long-term care homes and into our beds. Just over the last few months, we get a lot of crisis wait lists. So residents that are being admitted into our home right now currently are needing increased levels of care. And I know that it's only going to get more higher demand as the years come. And considering that the county and Brantford is going to be the best place to retire in the near future, I could really see the need for these beds. Sure.
And that's what makes the John Noble Home special.
Thanks, Councilor Chambers. Councilor Gatward, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, the Committee of Management members, I think, we had applied for the second batch of beds, the 20-floor, second floor beds. as complex care beds because that's what the province was focusing on. And they gave us those beds in a March 28th letter, but there was nothing in the letter about, oh, by the way, we're not going to fund complex care beds. And so the senior staff and management met and brought it to our last board meeting that the best option is to do as best we can on a secure floor with severe dementia patients and implementing all the various techniques. And the second floor would be regular long-term care beds because the province didn't approve the complex care. And that costs a lot more money because they'd have to put oxygen in the walls and a lot more equipment on the second floor, which would raise the costs even further. So the Committee of Management thought it would be wise to meet with our MPP. So we've requested a meeting with him this month, or no, this is in July. And we're going to try and schedule that when our MPP is back from his vacation. The county has requested through our clerk graciously to try and have a meeting with the Honorable Member Paul Calandra, who's the Minister of Long-Term Care. And we were going to lobby him for additional funds as well. I think some of the members feel like they award these beds, but don't show us the money. And I get some of that feeling from around this table. And certainly there is a huge need. We have over a 250 person waiting list at the John Noble. The Life Care Center also has over 250 on their waiting list. I don't know off the top of my head what the other homes are and their waiting lists. Most of those are for profit and are probably different. And perhaps that's why our lists are so high, because we have a good reputation and residents know they get quality care at our municipal homes. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. Councillor Weech, you're next, please.
Thank you. It's really, are you done with questions? Because this will be a comment, Mayor.
I think we're done with questions.
I've had the good fortune of being on the John Noble Home Board for a long time. I went through 2 constructions and a renovation. And each time, and Councillor Chambers was there for one of the constructions and he was there for one of the renovations, and all of them the same way. And each time a construction or a renovation happened, the home ended up being better. And when this all started 2 or 3 years ago, we just had a footprint on the ground of 20 beds, the ground floor. And if people want to criticize me, because I was one who pushed them to use a second floor, because your footprint on the ground is not going to change. Build up, not out. The opportunity for another 40 beds is there, and that need will be filled. As soon as that place opens, the beds will be filled. I look at, and I'm not complaining. I am not complaining, but I had to wait for a surgery because there was no room in the hospital because of COVID. And there's a lot of beds that are taken up in the hospital because there's no place for them to go to a home. And this is an opportunity, I think, is going to be a great investment for both the municipality of Brantford and the county of Brant to look to the future, not look back and answer the problem today, but look to the future and prepare for the future. Yes, I know it's going to cost us a lot of money. I understand that, but you only get what you pay for. And there's some other frivolous things that I consider frivolous in the county. But this is a need. And like Shelley pointed out, Councillor Gatward pointed out, our waiting list is lengthy. And it's not just us at the John Noble home, it's all the homes that have a lengthy waiting list. There's a lengthy waiting list in St. George at Russell Heights. and that's not a long-term care home. People are looking for places to go. I think we need to move forward on this, and I congratulate Shelley and Michael for doing what you're doing. In our previous administrator, not to center out David Miller, but David's wife was our administrator and a wonderful, and she was there at the start of this whole thing and did an absolutely fabulous job of planning for the future. And we have to plan this for the future, not for today, but for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheat. Are there any other comments? Being a member of the board also at John Noble Home, we were disappointed with the cost when they came in. I guess Councillor Gatward, good for you for getting the beds, but next time tell the minister we need the walls and the floors too. So thank you for all you do. Thank you, Michael, for speaking to us. Who has this to move forward? Councillor Gatward? You have the motion?
I have a motion. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that the delegation from Michael Bastian, administrator of the John Noble Home, be received as information, and that the request for additional funding for Belcourt redevelopment be referred to staff for a report. And Mr. Mayor, I hope that could come forward at our July council meeting so that we can move forward with asking the ministry for some help.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's a good idea. Thank you. Any other questions? Call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that it was unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Shelley.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Mayor Bailey and council, thank you.
4.3, Kim from SCORE. Hi, Kim. Come on up. You can just state your full name, Kim, for us, just for the record.
Absolutely. Mayor and members of council, thank you very much for having me here this evening. My name is Kimberly Earls, and I'm the Executive Director of the South Central Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation, or SCORE EDC. And I'm here this evening to give you an update on the Regional Rail Project. So we'll just go through a general overview of the project. I'll give you an update on where we are and an ask from the County of Brant. So first of all, just an overview of the project. This project is a reinstatement of rail service along the Cayuga subdivision, which is a freight or short line rail operation that runs roughly 27 kilometers from just east of St. Thomas through Oxford County, the southern part of Oxford County, and into Norfolk County. I apologize. I have my glasses back on and off because sometimes I can see, sometimes I cannot. So this is just a map of roughly where the rail runs, just so you can get a geographic proximity of where this rail line actually operates. So this rail line was slated for discontinuance process through CN. It is a CN-owned line. It was formerly, there was another short line rail operation that ran that line, and it was going through the discontinuance process. At the time, the SCORE Board of Directors and elected officials throughout the region and the economic development senior staff came together to look at if there was a genuine need for continued rail operation and how that might impact the services and the businesses along that line. So we conducted a survey. There were 7 major businesses along the line, and the survey indicated that those businesses were collectively had about 402 employees, and if the line was in fact to be lost, that there would be a revenue loss of just under 8 million, and a reported annual logistics increase in costs at about 1.5 million. So again, we decided that there was indeed merit in looking forward for some options of business development for this rail line. This is just a breakdown of where the crossings are and some of the acreage information about the line. So one of the first things that we did as part of the business study was identify not only the jobs and the sector impact along that line, but also were there any development opportunities that might have a regional interest. And so this is just a breakdown of the sites and that acreage involved there. And these next few slides outline the development sites within each of the counties where the rail directly runs. So that was, sorry, I whizzed through that pretty quick. That was Elgin County, Oxford County, and the line again is mainly along that southern portion in Tillsonburg, and then into Norfolk County where the line is the smallest expanse of kilometers. So what we discovered through the development of the economic case was that if we were to support the continuance of the line in any form, it would likely need some infrastructure investments and upgrades. Some of the benefits of having the line other than to the immediate businesses and communities involved are the increased environmental sustainability of the means of transportation, some sustainable and affordable logistics for the businesses and the supply chains within that are operated along that line, and probably most relevant to County of Brant to this council is the IGCP facility, which is the Integrated Grain Processors Co-op in Elmer. And certainly farmers, corn farmers from across the region, including County of Brant, do take their products to that facility. I believe the next closest facility may be Port Colborne. So that definitely has some regional agricultural impacts. This slide that we have here is just a breakdown of the budget of the requirement of the need to upgrade the line right now. So right now we are looking at just over $6.5 million required to upgrade the line to be able to fully service those industries. So one of the issues that came out of the engineering report for the line when we originally looked at what it would need to be upgraded to service those industries is right now it's had an underinvestment in capital over the last few years, and pardon me, the crossings need upgrading, and there are 2 bridges which also require some minimal upgrading in capital investments. Why that? It is operational right now, but at a decreased capacity. So right now they're not able to run on the full in full line with the Class 1 rails that it would connect to. In order to have those investments, it would need an upgrade on some of those track pieces in the crossings, and that would allow the line to operate with more frequency, which would be needed for our manufacturing and agricultural sectors, but also for an increased weight. And again, that was particular to the grain farmers and the agricultural sector. So right now the line is running at a 265,000 pound capacity, and Class 1 rails are at 286,000 pounds. So it is a significant upgrade that would be needed. So with that said, we signed a letter of intent with a short line operator, Geo Rail, and the town of Tillsonburg to seek funding to see if we could collaborate and find some funds to do this capital investment. And we did apply to the National Trade Corridor Fund through an expression of interest. They deemed our project to be valuable enough to go on to the full application phase. We've also spoken to the province about contributions for this piece of infrastructure, and at this time there are no funding programs that support that. In addition to that, we have sought and have commitments from the businesses and other municipalities along the line. And then again, this is just a breakdown of the crossings by municipal ownership. So most of the crossings are in Elgin County, with some being in Oxford, and again, a few in Norfolk as well. So my request this evening is a letter of support from the County of Brant for our funding application. The full application would be just over a $7 million investment. There has been some investment done on the line to safety and signaling pieces, but for the full investment, it would be a $7 million investment. We're requesting 50% of that from the National Trade Corridor Fund. And because it is a national program, it's quite competitive. And so we need to demonstrate that there is regional support and interest in supporting this project in general. So it would be a $3 million investment from the federal government, and the rest coming from the short line rail operator, municipalities. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councillor Pierce, you're first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for that presentation. You answered my one question in regards to the provincial funding. Apparently there's nothing there. On the project budget page, if I could, just a couple questions on that. Sure. You talk about the crossing upgrades, and there was a couple of pages of where they were. That's, 60% of your cost is the upgrades to the crossings. Now, is that just, are we talking just new arms, that type of thing, or will there be some that will have to have potentially bridges built over top of them? Are we aware of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So some of I would say the bulk of the crossings require some type of resurfacing. There are only 2 bridges which require some support investments in those, but for the most part, the investment would be in the crossing, the resurfacing, as well as the electronics. So those would certainly be, that safety piece that would include some of the arms and those types.
Okay, thank you for that. One other one, if I could, Mr. Mayor. I think I heard you correctly. You said that some of the tracks have to go, is it 265,000 pounds to 286 or something like that? So would that be like potentially an extra rail car on the tracks? Because I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons of that. And I understand, like, if we're talking grain or something like that, sure, you can fit many tons of grain into a rail car. But I'm just trying to again just judge the benefits of putting that money into the infrastructure of the track for, in essence, potentially one extra rail car. I'm just curious if those discussions were had, or if it was just that's what we're doing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, I'm probably not I probably can't answer that question directly, but why the increase in weight capacity, and it was from that 265, which is the current weight capacity, to 286,000, is that is consistent with the Class 1 rail lines around it. So what was happening in the past, my understanding is that the short line rail operations and the businesses along there were not fully utilizing or taking advantage of those supply chain assets because of that bottleneck, essentially, that was created from the Class 1 weight that was at the 286 down to the short line, that sort of first and last mile piece that was the 265. And so what we've learned over the past 2 years, especially in manufacturing sector and somewhat in the agricultural sector, is those first and last mile pieces of our supply chain are inherently very important to not only the businesses that they serve directly, but those entire sectors within the region. I know that didn't really answer the card question, but I hope that gives some weight to the question of weight.
No pun intended. Yeah. Okay, no, as I say, and thank you for the explanation. Just trying to weigh the cost to see if it can be brought down. Thank you.
Councillor Pierce. Councillor Miller, you're next, please.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. I threw it to Kim. Kim, would GeoRail still run it? Would they still be managing it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, GeoRail has secured a 10-year lease with CN. And if, so they've already invested around 1 million to get it operational again, because there actually was a span of time that was close to 15 months where there was no traffic along that line. It happened to coincide with the pandemic, so there were other issues, you know, that caused the business some issues there. So it can't be directly attributed to rail, but they would continue operations along that line for the period of 10 years with, I believe, the option for automatic renewal annually beyond that for an additional 10 years.
Okay, obviously the least energy intensive way to move things is by ship. Everybody knows that. The next one is rail. It's far more efficient than trucks. And I'm just wondering, is it profitable now, this rail line, or do they expect it to be profitable in the near future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so as part of the research that we compiled to get ready for the application, we did do some projection on how many rail cars would be needed to be sustainable, and so that the short line operator would avoid any of these lack of investments in the future. And what we had determined was for years, sort of a milestone points of years 1, 3, and 5, that there be a 335 cars would need to be utilized along the line. The first year, third year, it was 415 cars. In year 5, it was 555 cars. And the demand has been such already that they could surpass that first year if they had the infrastructure upgrades.
Okay, Kim, I'm going to cut you off there. I think the answer is yes. Okay, so why are you asking the government for money? Why don't you just ask the people for money? And I'll give you the example of the ethanol plant. They went around and they had investor meetings, and those places were packed, right? People were whipping out their checkbooks and cutting checks and buying a piece of it. And ethanol don't make sense from an energy point of view, but that's another story. This does. Is this something they thought about? Could we get in on a piece of the action? You know, the people that live in the area. Are they planning on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have had steering committees where all of the businesses and elected officials and other interested stakeholders were involved. And those businesses are investing in this project if we're successful. They've also committed dollars. But I think in order for them to remain in the region and service that sector for a asset that is not owned, that was not really an option that they were.
Okay, I know it can happen. I'm not saying listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, but I think there's a way you can get some private money there. Because to me, it sounds like a great project. I'd cut you a check tonight if I could and invest in it. So if I'm willing to do that, I think there's a lot of other people, including Councillor Chambers. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bell, you're next, and then Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Kim. Thank you for the presentation. Really following on from what David Miller just mentioned, on one of your slides, you talk about 7 businesses that have been surveyed who will lose on revenues nearly $8 million a year. So I would have thought they'd be quite keen to invest in achieving your $6 million target to get annual revenues of $8 million. So taking it where David left, now, have you approached these individual businesses to ask them to contribute to this rail enhancement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have, and we do have letters of confirmation of financial commitment from, I believe, all but one of those businesses. I hope we'll see that confirmation from that standalone business tomorrow.
Good. It seems like the logical source for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, just for clarification, it may be being thought of as that SCORE is the one doing this, and SCORE is not the one doing this. SCORE is helping to make it happen with private development. We're encouraging it. This isn't a SCORE project where SCORE is collecting the money and et cetera. So don't make that a mistake. It's just basically an endorsement of the project. And I noticed on the last slide that the deadline was June 25th. So I'm prepared to make a motion as fast as I can so we can get, something to the effect that we ask our economic development department to craft a letter of support for the mayor's signature to be forwarded to SCORE as fast as we can. I don't know, we don't have a time machine. We can't go back to June 25th, but maybe we can date it that way. But if that's the kind of motion that you would like,
That's great.
that would
Is
be
there other support
a
around the
motion for
table? Can
me.
I get a seconder for Councillor Chambers, Councillor Pierce? They do have a time traveler in Mount Pleasant every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So we'll do it again next week too. Anyway, we have it on the floor. It's been seconded. There's support around the table to apply a letter of support. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Nice to see you again. Always welcome in the county of Brant. Going on to 4.4, please. Tracy Pillen Abs, representing Land Square. Are you? Oh, there you are. Oh, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, to members of the council. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you this evening. As you're aware, the Planning Committee recommended that a proposed telecommunication tower not be supported, but I am here to just see if I could get the council to reconsider that recommendation. The property is 447 Baptist Church Road. It's a 65 meter self-support tower. There is a defined need for internet coverage for residents, farmers, people in vehicles, people who are working from home. There is only one neighbor impacted, and they are 110 meters setback. You do have a protocol. Your protocol is just a guide. It's not a definitive policy like anything that's set out in the Planning Act. So what your protocol says is where we fail is that we need to be within a larger setback based on our height. What we have done is looked at alternative locations, and we feel that this is the best location for the property. We're willing to reduce the height from 65 meters to 60 meters. We've added some additional photo simulations to show the neighbor how the visual impact will not be as negative, because there are some existing trees in the area, and that we are willing to plant some trees around the base of the tower as well. So we feel that this is good planning. We've looked at alternative sites on this property, and we really feel that we need to stay away from the floodplain as a priority, as opposed to staying away from the one resident. So what we're asking council this evening is to provide ISIG with a letter of concurrence. Again, towers are regulated through Industry Canada federally, and what we're just looking for is your letter of support. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there any questions to Tracy? Councillor Coleman, you're first, please.
Mayor, RCA in favor of this location?
Tracy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The Conservation Authority has provided some direction and some suggestions on where it should be located, and we do have their letter of support that just as long as we stay out of their floodplain area, they are willing to allow for the location. Again, in your protocol as a guideline, we don't meet that setback as well, but administration did feel that that could be supported because the Conservation Authority had no objections.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Miller's first, and then Councillor Bell.
Two quick questions for you to Tracy, Mr. Mayor. Tracy, just to be clear, you did look at other locations, and there aren't any. This was the much preferred location, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I confirm that we have looked at other locations, barns, silos, co-location on existing towers. The uniqueness of this property, it is essentially the next door beside a large hydro corridor. So the design of the self-support tower will blend in very similarly to the towers that are located in the hydro corridor.
Thank you for reminding us about those 100-meter towers right beside this. Okay, thank you. Second question is, it goes to ISED. Would you still be going for the 65 or the 60?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. We'd be looking for your direction on that. Right now, we're proposing 65 meters, but if council would like to put a 60 meter in their letter of concurrence, we would definitely support that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Tracy. I'm trying to picture the land that this tower is sitting on, and I recall it's actually between the house on the property on which the tower will be set, and the next house along is the house that is raising the complaints and concerns. Is it not possible to simply move the tower to the other side of the house on the property that you are using? I mean, if we could move this away by 50 or 60 meters, I think the problem is solved and you can still have your 65-meter tower. I'm just surprised that there is so little flexibility on the site that you have available to accommodate the requirements of the protocol from the county. Without seeing the drawing, I'm really struggling to get it, but maybe you could answer that question to me.
Tracy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. So it is proposed to have the tower within the existing cluster of buildings. There's an accessory structure and a house, and we're keeping it close to the road so that it minimizes the visual impact, because the area is quite low in that spot. So it actually makes the tower look smaller. Anything over to the east side of the property is within the floodplain area. So we had to completely avoid the east side. We had to stay on the west side of the property. Now, sometimes the plane of view is when it's closer, you actually see it less, because the neighbor does have trees along that part of their house, which would help buffer the visual impact. We did take a look at further south, but then now we're getting into their rear yard, which does impact their amenity space to the abutting property owners, and it gets away from that cluster of existing buildings. So we felt that this was the preferred location.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Tracy, for that. One final question. To the southwest, there is a large number of large electrical pylons. Is it technically not possible to site a communications tower in the same location? It would almost vanish in terms of eyesight.
Tracy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that property is owned by the hydro company, and they tend not to want to share their property. They do want to commit their property to just their products, and they've been approached as well as a potential landlord for the housing of the tower, and they declined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Tracy. So appreciate the fact that you'd be willing to go from 65 meters to 60 meters. That's about 17 feet, I guess. But like, what is the lowest that it can go and still get the coverage that you're looking for? Like 55? Is that too low? I'm curious here.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. 60 meters would be the lowest in order to be able to achieve the coverage that we need for this area to be able to get at least a 2-kilometer range.
2 kilometer. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tracy? Seeing none, we're going to be addressing this later on in the agenda for either reconsideration or deferral, or just leave it the way it sits on our agenda now. Are you okay with that, Tracy?
Yes, thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for showing up tonight. We don't need a motion. We'll just keep going, knowing that we're going to bring it back up at 8.1. Thank you. Number 5 is the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, second by Councilor Miller, that the County of Brant Council minutes of May 24th, 2022, and special council minutes June 7th, 2022 be approved.
Are there any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Doing next. Where's my? They've printed on both sides of my paper here. Business arising from those minutes. Do we have anything that we want to talk about, separate, discuss? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. Consent items for approval, there aren't any. 7.2 consent items to be received. Councilor Wheat.
That's moved by myself, second by Councilor Miller. Consent item 7.2.1 through 7.2.6 be received.
Are there any that you want separated or discussed? Councilor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question regarding 7.2.6.
All right.
I don't need it separated. My question is, why on page 164 and 170 are the patrol hours redacted on the report?
So you're referring to Police Services Board minutes?
Sorry?
Are you referring to the Police Services Board minutes?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce, do you want to speak to that? Do you have it in front of you?
164 and 170.
I have the answer to this if you need it, Mr. Mayor.
Hello there, Mark.
It's in the report. If you look at the page before, it says there was a technical issue with the data collection that month. That's right there in the report why it's blacked out. It's not blacked out, it's just blank.
Councilor Gatward, did you hear him?
I didn't understand what he said now. Could
Mark?
you repeat?
It's a technical error and it was in the report. If you look at the page previous to the blacked out areas, it's a technical issue that they couldn't get the data that month. It's just a one-off.
Good. So it's a technical issue and it's blacked out, Councilor Gatward.
Oh.
And it says so on the page before the first blacked out.
And it says so on the page before.
Oh, it'll just be as usual then the next time.
Mark is shaking his head yes.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else to add to that, Councilor Pierce? No? Okay, you're clear on that, Councilor Gatward? So we're voting on everything together. We didn't really separate it. We just discussed it. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 8.1.
That's, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to separate item 2.
Great, item
Yes,
2.
Yes, please, thank you. And are there any others to be separated?
Not sure, I haven't asked you. Are there any others to be separated? Okay, Councilor Miller?
Okay, so moved by myself, second by Councilor Coleman, that the Planning and Development Committee report of June 7th, 2022 be approved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And Councilor Miller?
Just, I don't support the recommendation for item number 2. We talk about infrastructure, especially for the rural areas. We look at, obviously, broadband, natural gas, we need electricity, we need cell phone service. And that is sorely lacking in many areas. And as the data loads increase, the need becomes even higher. We need it for emergency services. We need it to run a lot of our equipment, including some of our solar panels, I found out. What we're looking at is the biggest complaint I heard about the cell phone tower is its appearance. And yet all around this place are these 100-meter big hydro towers. So I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think the agent offered to do a beautiful job making it look like it fits in. They've offered to reduce the size. So I'm 100% in favor of this tower going up. So I will support the.
Thank you. Councilor Coleman, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And last night I made a tour down to that area to have a look at this, and talked to a few residents that have had problems with internet, and they're all in favor of this tower. So at the time when if it does not, this motion is turned down, I will make a new motion that we approve it at a 60 meter. But one of the residents spoke to me and made sense to me and then what the delegation tonight said was that ERCA favor, as long as it stays out of the wetland. Fully agree with that. And the resident last night down there told me, sometimes maybe your council or your planning staff has got too sensitive. I thought, that is a really good statement. We've got too sensitive to some of these issues. So I'm fully support that we turn this down and move on to a different size height tower.
Councillor Pierce, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't echo what the councillors have said there, but I agree as well with the surroundings of this. I don't think it'll be out of place. And that being said, when I was asking the questions earlier, and I appreciated the fact that Tracy was looking at reducing it to 60 meters, if we're talking a 200-foot tower, it's a difference of 17 feet. So to me, I don't think that makes that much of a visual difference, and that would enable to expand a little bit farther on the radius of service. So to me, as what's been stated here, we're looking for, you know, broadband of service to all counts, all parts of the county, and I'd be in favor of keeping it at the 65 meters in this specific spot because of the surroundings. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councillor Bell and then Councillor Wheat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little confused because the recommendation doesn't say we don't support it. It just says it's not in accordance with our protocol. And I think we had that discussion last week, and Michael raised issues about delegation of authority. But I think, you know, I think if you want a firm statement that we support this tower, I'm happy to support that. But I think, as written, there's nothing wrong with this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Wheat.
Fully agree with everything Councillor Pierce said. Through you, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, through you. Agree with everything Councillor Pierce said. What's the difference between 17 feet? The optics? People going to get up there with a measuring stick? I doubt it.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Could someone just refresh my memory on section 4.3, what that actually is, what that statement is? That it's not in accordance with 4.11 or 4.3, and it might not be.
Pam's on the line here. Pam, are you still with us? Hi.
Good evening.
Did you hear Councillor Chambers' question?
Yes, I did. So I don't
Frozen?
have the exact terminology, but it does talk about that a tower needs to be 3 times the tower height away. So in this case, the 65-meter tower would require 3 times away. That's 195 meters. 60 would be 180 meters. So hopefully that helps you.
Councillor Chambers?
So then it is not in conformity with 4.3. And
That's
the
correct.
recommendation says that basically that's all it's saying. It's not in conformity with 4.3. Just to remind council, we're not the approval body, we're the commenting body. Our comment is that it's not in accordance with 4.3, which is a fact. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the resolution. If that is not a significant factor to for the tower to get the approval from the approval agency, then so be it. But I'm not going to say that it is in accordance with something that it isn't. And the resolution is very specific, just a comment. It's not yes or no.
It's not up to us. It's only up to us to comment. Are there any other questions, Councillor Miller? Pardon? Oh, Councillor Ferrier, sorry. Mark?
That's okay. That's okay, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. I support the cell tower. I mean, I'm not going to say somebody is insensitive or sensitive based on that, but my piece is that I can't vote against the fact. So I can't vote against that piece, but if there was another resolution supporting the tower, despite that, or an amendment to it, I would be happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Just to keep in mind, those are guidelines. MDS has guidelines. I don't know how many times we've sat around this table and approved a change in those MDS guidelines. It is frustrating to see this because there's one house. It's frustrating that we would say to the federal government, not really in support of this. So what I would like to do, and I'm not sure how we do this, is maybe Councillor Coleman will come up with something there, but is support this location and support the fact that it's needed and we would like it here in the county.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so what we can do is make an amendment saying everything that everyone said is true and the county still supports it. All we can do. Looking for an amendment? Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would be willing to add an amendment to it that, keep that as it is because it is fact, but put a statement in there, this being said, the county supports this location for the tower.
Okay.
And I would go at it at the 65. I'd look for a seconder at the 65 meters.
Councillor Wheat?
I think the proper way to do it is to defeat number 2, and then a separate recommendation would be made. And I will support Councillor Pierce, who wants to put it at 65 meters, but it's a separate recommendation.
I think it can be done all in one. I think it's
really.
quite, I think it can be. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you see, I don't want to take out the fact that, it's not in accordance with section 4.3 because it isn't.
It isn't.
You know what I mean? But like Councillor Miller had said and stuff like that when we're thinking other things, it's a guideline. So we're acknowledging the fact that, it is in contradiction to that, but we're also suggesting that, even though it is, we're still in favor of it being there. So I think it'd be just an amendment to what is there if we're able to do that.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Bell. Is everyone comfortable in voting as one motion? Let's see how it goes. All those in favor? Of the amended? Anyone opposed? Councillor Chambers is confused.
Sorry, I lost the amendment that we're adding to that we support.
We understand that it's not in compliance with the county, but we still think it's the best location for the tower.
Yes. 65.
At 65.
And that may be as well, and that may be the thing, but that does not, again, the protocol responsibility we have is to comment. Our comment is that we have no objection, basically.
Yes.
Is, I think, the way to say that.
We understand it's not in compliance, but we still think it's a great place for the tower. That's all we can say. That is our comments. I mean, that's the truth. And the other piece is how we feel.
I like it better that way because we set up a protocol that doesn't meet it, and then we say, well, forget about our protocol. Like it's not consistent with how we should do that.
We've just voted on it and it passed, but I think now we need to go back to staff and figure out, maybe we are being a little precious with our measurements. Maybe it's time for the county to see what we can do moving forward and changing things. But right now we have to deal with bylaws and things that are in place. So we're not really comfortable with the way it sits with the county, but maybe we can just send that to staff to see what else we can come up with. But I think we just made that happen. So we need to vote on number 2 separately. All those in favor? Amended, we just did that, okay. Did it again. Moving on to 8.2, Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee Report, Councillor McAlpine.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor LaFerrier that the Policy Development Strategic Direction Committee report of June 14, 2022
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councillor McAlpine on his report? Seeing none, all those in favor of receiving it? Thank you. Call me again. There we go. 8.3, Administration and Operations Committee Report. Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chambers that the Administration and Operations Committee report of June 21st, 2022 be approved, noting that there are 10 recommendations.
Are there any questions to Councillor Pierce on his report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. 8.4, Paramedic Services Committee Report. Councillor Ferrier, prepared to make the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce that the Paramedic Services Committee report of June 7th, 2022 be approved.
Are there any questions to Councillor Ferrier on his report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Staff report. First one we have is the transfer of the new Cowan Health Hub to Brant Municipal Enterprises. Michael's going to speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Council, good evening. This report is fairly straightforward. I think it's just worth noting that this would be the last report in many reports which were noted in this report on this this project. This would be the report, I believe, which would close the project and move it to Brant Municipal Enterprises ownership, as was contemplated in many earlier reports. I just thought maybe it would be worth noting there was a small paragraph, and it said that the transfer of the health hub benefits BME by expanding its capacity to grow its business, benefits the county by reducing its need for financing and capacity building, and benefits the community by providing much needed services at minimal cost. And I think that summarizes the report quite well. Thank you.
Any questions to Michael? Gatward. Oh, Councillor Gatward, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is with respect to the last line of the recommendation. The 1.4 million is to be funded from reserves. I'm wondering which reserve fund that will be taken from.
Mr. Bradley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I chatted with the treasurer this morning. We would propose to take that from the financing reserve. I think it has about $4 million in it.
Finance reserve? Thank you.
Any other questions to Michael? Seeing none, Councillor Pierce, I believe you have this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You want me to read it, or I can?
We all have it in front of us.
Okay,
you can read it
perfect.
if you like.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bell, that the proposed recommendation be moved as written.
Everyone's clear? All those in favor? Opposed? Compliment staff and Mr. Bradley and everyone involved with the Health Hub. Probably one of the best investments we've made in the county of Brant. Well done. Moving on to 9.2, which is the update of the 2022 council calendar. Councillor Howes, you have this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wheat that the 2022 Council and Standing Committee meeting schedule be amended to recess from the September 27th, 2022 Council meeting until the inaugural Council meeting for the 2022 to 2026 term of Council on November 15th, 2022.
Questions? Everyone understands why we're doing it? Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Communications, the business, Paris Business Improvement, Area Board of Management request appointment of a new board member. Mr. Bell, you have this?
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gatwood, that County of Brant Council appoint Courtney Losh, the Downtown Paris Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the remainder of the current term.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 11, the resolution of the Brantford Municipal Airport. Councillor Coleman, you have this.
Mayor, and I just read this, I have to read. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wheat. speak to it at the appropriate time.
Okay, any questions? Comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.2, resolution. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. No, speak to it. Councillor Miller, do you want to speak to it for Councillor Coleman?
I had a question and I wanted to.
Well, I want to
I'll
give
just
you the time.
Yeah.
I want to give you the time to speak to it. Although we voted, it doesn't matter what you think.
And I get you. Anyhow,
I'm sorry.
Last number of years, we've had a number of inquiries of wanting to expand the airport, bigger hangars, new businesses wanting to come in and whatnot. So the city has approved this, and they've asked for the county to approve this. But like a joint venture, we need to work together to make this work for the betterment of both communities. Thank you. You got it.
There you go. Councillor Miller, do you have anything else to say? Doesn't matter really, we voted you. But we will give you that opportunity because you look confused. David, do you have anything else to say?
No, I wanted to hear Councillor Coleman speak to why it came about, and I think, well.
Thank you. We're going to go on to number 11. Oh, Councillor Gatward. Michael?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I've had a little bit of discussion with my counterpart at the city. At this point, they haven't asked for funding for this project. I believe that they will be looking towards the county in the future, depending on how this project evolves, for the county to take a more of a partnership, I think, approach in that airport. And that may include capital funding in the future. And I don't believe, but I could be wrong, that we provide any grant to the airport for taxes, collect the tax. Noting that a portion of the airport, I believe, is a facility, but I do believe there is a tax bill for the leased facilities on the property, and that we do collect those taxes.
Thank you. Councillor Gatward, you're okay with that? Yeah, I think so. All right, we're going to move on to 11 point, where's Mark? 11.2, resolution, the arts and culture engagement. Councillor Howes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll ask all to bear with me. I am going to read this because there are people watching at home who don't have the benefit of having these sheets in front of us. So, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell. Whereas arts and culture activities are an integral part of the social and economic well-being of a community, and whereas the county is currently beginning the process to undertake an arts, cultural, and heritage master plan, and whereas a desirable outcome of this strategic plan will be a forum where arts and culture stakeholders and community members can provide meaningful input and guidance on how arts and culture activities are supported, promoted, and fostered in the community. Therefore, that staff be directed to include as part of the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Master Plan recommendations to provide meaningful stakeholder and community input and engagement into arts and culture. A new art council, arts and culture advisory committee, or expanded tourism advisory council are some examples of possible outcomes, possible options.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Councillor Howes? Councillor Miller, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Howes for this motion, because I would never bring this motion forward in a million years, simply because that's not who I am, arts and culture. So I'm glad we have different people around this table. But my question to Councillor Howes is, how do you see the structure of, say, that advisory committee? What do you see, 2, 3 council members and the mayor with citizens? Is that that would be my thought, but I just want to get your thoughts on it.
Councillor Howes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Miller. So I don't have a strict vision in mind because I want to leave it open. We're going to have a consultant involved who's going to be working on this master plan for arts, culture, and heritage, and I don't want to presuppose any conclusions. There's a wide range of ways that it can be done, as it says in the last line. You could have an arts council. You could have an arm of another existing advisory committee that specializes more in this area. There's a lot of different ways it could look, but it would be listening to the voices of the community is the bottom line.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The last line says, or an expanded tourism advisory council. Is that supposed to be tourism advisory committee, which we currently have?
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I think the tourism advisory committee is a great idea, and I think they had broken off into some subcommittees. I don't know whether they ever delved into arts and culture, but certainly we're going to have that beautiful hall in the library someday, which would be a great place for some activities. But yeah, I just wanted to note that council will be changed to committee, and then thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gatward. Yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you for bringing it forward. Any other comments before we call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And we are going to other business. I have something. Does anyone else have anything under new business? Councillor Miller?
Can I go?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Just talking about trails and the closure of trails. And we had the case out in Ward 4 where there was a class trip going on for a hike down the trails. They checked the website, didn't see any closures. They get on the trail. There's county staff doing work. They couldn't get past. It's a bit of an issue for them. But I'm just wondering, I thought they did what they should do. You know, checking the website for any closures, not seeing any, they proceeded. Anyways, stuff happens, get that, I understand, but through Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, if I could maybe ask Cindy Stevenson, General Manager, what can we do as a county to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen again?
Cindy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in this particular case, the county had posted a notice on social media, and the county does post notices on social media for service disruptions that are planned or unplanned. A longer-term service disruption is posted on the county website. So if there was a closure on a trail for more than a day, if it was going to be extended for weeks, we would update the trail map in that case. But because this was only for a few hours, we didn't update the full trail map. Staff have been working on developing an information package to send to schools for 2023, requesting that they book certain sites and inform us if they're using any recreational amenities. This will enable coordinated scheduling, avoid overcrowding, and it will allow the county to schedule maintenance kind of around what might be planned as an event. So we are working on improving communications with the schools, but also, you know, letting everybody know that we do post service disruptions as soon as we know about them on our social media.
For you, Mr. Mayor, thank you to Cindy. I think that's good. Social media is good. And I like the coordination with the schools. At the same time, staff might want to check the schedule to see that there's no classes coming through. Right? Like I've expected ways, but it would work both ways.
Through the mayor, yes. So if we're aware, if the school has contacted us through facility bookings, we would certainly work around what their plans are as far as using a trail or a recreational amenity as much as we could.
Thank you. Any other business, Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that, and you'd be interested, I was very happy to see They've started asphalting Birch Road and Mount Pleasant Road near the windmill this week. So that's going to cut the dust down and make a lot of Mount Pleasant people happy before they start doing Cockshut. So thank you very much to staff for getting the contractor on that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor McAlpine for an event in St. George on the weekend that was outstanding. Usually I'm involved in events in St. George, and this one I had nothing to do with, so I got to attend it as just a person without any responsibilities or duties, and that was nice to just go to an event. But this was not just an event. This was very well received by St. George. It was very professionally done. I was very proud of the work that went into it. Councillor McAlpine and Linda Howell, they did a great job, and I don't know who their committee was, but they did a great job. It should be an annual thing, and if it comes to council and down the road, we should fund it, or we should help along the way, because I don't know if they made any money or lost any money, but it was a great event. The other thing I wanted to say is there was a little bit of trouble in Mount Pleasant today on the trails. The OPP are involved. Someone has put nails and tacks down the pass, and there was a lot of trouble with bicycles and tires and all kinds of things. So you might see a couple of disruptions in Mount Pleasant, but the OPP are on it, and so everything's good. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If I could just circle back to the discussion on the trails and closing them and stuff like that. I know we all received the email on the 27th of May that it was going to be closed on the 30th, and it also was on the website. So I'm not sure what else we can do on that. 3 days in advance, the notice has gone out. So I think that's sufficient. And unfortunately, they are public trails, and it's difficult for me to say, okay, I'm going to use this trail on this day. But I think the way Cindy was talking there in regards to the communication both ways, from the school to us and us to the schools, I think that's the only addition that can be done. But I think as far as the notifications that we put out, I think they were sufficient 3 days in advance. And I know I'll leave it at that.
I think we do a good job too. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, we'll count on Councillor House to take us in camera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell that the County of Brant Council convene in camera to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and litigation or potential.
Thank you, Councillor House. All those in favor to go in camera? Thank you. Take us We're good? Takes us to 14, which are the bylaws, and we have Councilor Ferrier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Chambers that bylaws 14.1 to 14.10 be read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Ferrier for the second time, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Chambers that bylaws 14.1 to 14.10 be read a second time and all preambles and clauses be adopted.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the second reading? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Councilor Ferrier, if you could do it for the third time, please.
No worries, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Chambers that bylaws, now it says here 14.2 to 14.10 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor? Third reading? Thank you. Is that all we have is the next meeting and the adjournment? Anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Oh my God. I've lost control and all I can see is bricks. Seeing nothing else for the betterment of the county of Brant, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Coleman, thank you. We stand adjourned until Tuesday,